I think in 15, what you've seen from AOL is that we've really doubled down on reach, right? We've both when it comes to our owned and operated, we've really doubled down on kind of, from a global perspective, how do we take some of those brands and what are the brands that can have a life outside of the US? And as you just mentioned, with the Microsoft relationship, bringing that on, now touching 700 million people across the internet on a monthly basis, being in 21 countries, being the third biggest web property online. Those things matters, I think, because I think we're at a point in time and at an inflection point really where scale matters. And I think, especially when you look at it from an advertiser perspective, they want to buy into, companies that are able to bring their brands out to the biggest possible audience, and obviously also be able to go deep to your point. Now we're at CES, TechCrunch and Gadget, those brands are obviously here. We're doing hardware battle with TechCrunch and really bringing that brand out here and outside of the internet and kind of unfolding it in a physical way, which I also think is interesting when you think about us as a digital property. What are the things we can do with our brands and bring them out where people can almost touch them and take part, so they become physical experiences as well. That could be the hardware battle. Obviously we have the crunchies. It could also be conferences and things like that. So I think that's another thing that we're thinking about is that what's the life that we have outside of the internet. And then I think the other thing that's obviously important is during 15, of course, we were acquired by Verizon. Anyway, when we look at our audience over 15, we became a mobile first company in the sense that the majority of our audience is now coming to us via mobile devices. And that really changes the way we have to think about things. And I think every time now that we're creating experiences, when we're doing things, the way we use data, it needs to start with the mobile. And that's it's a mindset change for us, and something that we're going to spend a lot of time on in 16. And then, another thing that's a focus area for 16 is, of course, bringing more video onto our audiences. I think right now when people log onto the internet in the US, a third of what they do is watching online video. And right now, I think when I look across our properties, we're perhaps at 20%. That means that we are under indexing. The sources of new video is, of course, we're basically bringing investments back into the brands, meaning that we had an original series. We're still doing originals, but it will be HuffPost originals, it will be TechCrunch originals. So we're basically doubling down on the properties we have, the audiences we have, and trying to create webisode, deeper video experiences and shows within those brands, rather than trying to create something on top that needs to attract a new brand. So that's really where you're going to see the investment dollars flow in 16 from our experience. Of course, we're still going to have big new front slate, but it's going to be very tied to that. And then also, I think you're going to see what we started in 15 as well. We're going to continue doing that. HuffPost doing HuffPost Rise in the morning, so also doing shows. We also, setting up our production team so we can do much more fast, on-the-fly video content as well that can support all the different brands. So I think that's really what you're going to see. If I'm just thinking about our video production capabilities, essentially we have more than 100 people in our studios team, right? So we have a huge team that hopefully can help us really accelerate the video production, both original produced things, but also more faster on-the-fly things that can support kind of the stories, the content we create with the brands. I think when it comes to ad blocking, I think in the US, it's not at the level that we're seeing in the UK or Europe in general, where ad blocking is at a much higher level when we talk about it from a consumption perspective. And I've seen actually, when we talk about Europe for a second, I've seen interesting things that The Guardian, for instance, is trying. Right, if you want to read their content for free, then actually you have to accept that you can't have ad blockers on your site, otherwise you don't have access to the content. So I think that's one way of going about it. I think, but as an industry, obviously we need to think about this. Ad blocking, you can't have ad blocking coming in and destroying the ecosystem, because right now it's still heavily dependent on advertising dollars. And as such, we're not going to be able to produce the content that the audience wants to view if there's no advertising. So either you accept that you have to see advertising or you have to pay subscription. There's really no other way around it if we want to produce content to an audience. So I think that's something that we will have to work through 16 and even beyond as an industry. So I think that's how I see that trend.
And in terms of display, custom advertising,
yes.
How do you see that mix?
No, I think, for us, we basically just took, we have a big partner studio which is doing branded content, content advertising, native advertising, and we moved it from the sales team actually back into the content organization, so it moved back into me. And the reason for that is we actually see that advertisers are spending more and more here, but they want to be much more strategic. They want it to be tied closer to the different properties, and therefore we need to make sure that we're able to ideate and obviously work much closer with the content, because the ideas will originate out of the content creation organization. So I think that part of it is predicted to grow 35% as an industry in 16, and we're really doubling down on that. We want that premium side of our business really to work. That being because that is our premium units, the premium sales to point, and the rest will go to programmatic, right? It'll be sold in traditional display units, but obviously for me as a publisher, it's very interesting for me to obviously take the audience, the eyeballs we have, and selling it against branded content programs that have much higher CPMs, or video for that matter, video advertising on our pages that have higher CPMs, so we can create better experiences for the audience, and hopefully also create experiences that they don't want to turn off, that they actually think are engaging. And that's one of the reasons why I'm, as a publisher, is very keen on branded advertising, because what we see from the numbers is that when we do it right, the engagement we see on those type of programs is not much off than what we see if we do traditional content, right? The engagement rates are much higher because it's done in a narrative way, your storytelling. It's not a product that we're trying to shove down your throat, and I think that's an interesting notion, and an important notion is that as soon as you move out of the right-hand rail and into the content section, the product in some shape or form needs to take a backseat. You need to kind of do something to entertain, to do something that is creating a better experience. Otherwise, you're going to turn our audience off, and at the end of the day, the primary objective for me as a publisher is to create the biggest possible audience, so it would be stupid to put advertising in our content section that got them to go somewhere else, because that means that our audience will decline. So I think that's why I'm very keen on well-executed branded content solutions.